Welcome to this explainer. I've got to tell you, I was absolutely blown away by the source material we're diving into today. It's truly fascinating. We're exploring the astrology of habits versus values. But look, here's the thing. We're not looking at the horoscope today as some kind of mystical crystal ball predicting your future. Instead, we're using it as a highly structured, incredibly insightful psychological mirror. It's essentially a way to map out the inner workings of our daily choices.
So, ask yourself this. Are you living your values or simply repeating your habits? It's a profound question, and honestly, it's one that's quietly raised by every single birth chart. I mean, most of us genuinely believe that our daily actions actually reflect our deepest beliefs, right? But the material we're unpacking today suggests something very different. It reveals that there's often a massive gap between what we deeply value and what we actually do when that alarm goes off on a random Tuesday morning.
Section 1. Habits versus values.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 2, the inner world.
So, in astrological terms, our inner planets govern that quiet internal battle taking place inside all of us. Let's start with the sun. This represents a clash between our conscious intentions and our daily effort. Astrologically, the sun reflects the principles you want to embody, pointing directly toward the ideal person you hope to become. But you know, a strong ideal means absolutely nothing if your ordinary actions go the other way. It's like valuing physical health, but your daily effort consists of hitting snooze 3 times and grabbing a donut. Living your values requires everyday sweat, not just good intentions.
The distance between your ideals and your routines often reveals where self-discovery truly begins. I just want to pause and let that powerful quote sink in for a second. Our source emphasizes that true identity isn't created by those rare occasional moments of inspiration. Identity is built brick by brick through repeated everyday choices. If you want to know who you really are, just look at the gap between what you aspire to do and your actual daily routine.
But what about our emotions? Well, the moon tells a completely different story. It governs our emotional memory, generally preferring the comfort of the past over the truth of the present. It really asks us to consider a tough question. Are your emotional reactions actually responding to the present moment? Or are you simply revisiting old protective memories? Think about it. Have you ever lashed out in an argument not because of what the person just said, but because it reminded you of an old wound? Defending yourself before listening isn't necessarily a core value. It's just a familiar emotional habit repeating itself because, well, it once kept you safe.
Next up is Mercury, the mind, which so often disguises our habits as pure logic. It's that little voice that says, I absolutely need this 4th cup of coffee for productivity, or, well, this is just how I am. Habits love to generate clever PR for themselves. Mercury asks us to examine those daily thoughts. Do the narratives you repeat to yourself every single day actually reflect the genuine identity you wish to create? Or is your mind just drafting up a clever justification for a deeply ingrained habit?
Which brings us to Section 3, actions under pressure.
So what happens when those beautiful internal ideals we just talked about are suddenly tested by external stress and the demands of everyday life? Well, when our inner ideals meet the real world, things definitely get complicated. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens. Venus, Mars, and Jupiter each expose a distinct gap between the virtues we admire on paper and the familiar habit traps we fall into in reality. Let's see how this actually plays out.
We'll start with Venus. Your calendar often reveals your priorities more honestly than your intentions. Venus quietly examines what you actually invest your energy into. You might claim to value work-life balance or simplicity, but if we audit your screen time or your weekend schedule, what do we actually find? Are you inadvertently chasing endless achievement or constantly comparing yourself to others online? Our values are measured way less by the words we say, and much more by where our time and attention naturally flow.
Then there's Mars, which governs how we face conflict. Mars reveals character when comfort disappears. Values remain steady, but under stress, habits become significantly louder. I mean, when life is peaceful, anyone can be a saint, right? But when someone cuts you off in traffic or a massive deadline blows up at work, do you stand by your deeper principles, or do you instantly revert to old defensive reactions? Recognizing that difference is a massive part of personal growth. Jupiter encourages expansion, but it presents this fascinating paradox that really made me think. True growth only happens when understanding enters everyday behavior. We all know people who collect and read 100 self-help books, but never actually change. You might completely understand what brings you peace, yet you continue to feed your anxiety. Wisdom is entirely meaningless unless it actually alters your ordinary habits.
Moving into the final phase of our explainer, Section 4, Structuring Your Future.
Now we zoom out to look at the long-term, lifelong structures that ultimately determine our character. This brings us to Saturn, which contrasts purposeful structure against unconscious repetition. Saturn asks a very sobering question. Just because you've stayed in a career path or a relationship dynamic for 20 years, does that actually make it meaningful? Does your discipline support your core values, or has your purpose become quietly trapped inside decades of unquestioned routine? Sometimes we mistake a rut for a foundation. The biggest change in your life might start by simply questioning a habit you literally haven't thought about in years.
Finally, we have the lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu, which represent a constant tension in our lives. Think of Ketu as your favorite worn-out armchair. It represents the old tendencies and habits that feel incredibly safe and comfortable. Rahu, on the other hand, is the intimidating mountain trail outside your front door. It's the constant invitation for new experiences and growth. The lesson here is that while repeating the past feels incredibly safe in that armchair, genuine growth requires the courage to intentionally move toward your conscious values, stepping right out into the unknown.
So, the crucial point is this. Habits keep life familiar. They repeat the past. Values give life direction. They create the future. The horoscope, as presented in this source material, isn't meant to predict your future or tell you who you are. It's using astrology to show that every new, conscious decision changes the future far more than any prediction ever could. It's simply a tool to help reshape your everyday choices.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. When no one else is watching, when nothing is forcing your hand, and when every choice is entirely your own, are you living according to what you truly believe? Or are you simply becoming the person your habits have quietly created? It's a question worth asking yourself today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it gives you a powerful new lens for your own life.